Good afternoon. This is the March 19th, 2024 work session of the Board of County Commissioners. I'm sitting in as acting chair today. Greg Postman and Francie Jacober are both on a plane going to Washington, D.C. to do some lobbying for RAFTA, the Roaring Fork Transit Authority. So in the room we have Patty Clapper, myself, and Kelly McNicholas Curry. So first on our agenda this afternoon is a legislative update by Levi Borst. And there's lots of legislation going on in the middle of the legislative session right now. So what do you have for us?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Levi Borst, a management analyst here at Pickens County, and I've got a brief overview of some things that we touched on in our last update, and then a few other points of kind of local concern, things that might touch on some of our board values and community values, and then some links and ideas if there are further things that the board is interested in that they'd like staff to track or engage on or anything like that. So I'll share my screen and get started. Probably. Oh, great. So as we know, the session started January 10th, and we're just beyond the halfway point now. And so far this session, I think as of this morning, 610 pieces of legislation at the halfway point. And the legislature would have us believe that they were a little heavy on introduction at the first half, and they'll back off for the second half, and none of us believe that. So last session, 470 plus bills were sent through, and I think I heard that that was second in the nation of pieces of annual legislation. I don't know who's first.
New Jersey.
Was it?
I don't know, but I would guess.
They had 471.
Right.
Yeah. They don't have any limitation like our,
No, they don't.
you're not limited to 5.
So I've plugged into this presentation a whole lot of different links that link to legislation on the legislature's website, as well as a link to a spreadsheet that we've built that show pieces of legislation introduced. They show our various organizational priorities like CCAT or CCI or CAST or anything like that. And then also try to document when things are up for committee. just in case the board has any interest in engaging to whatever degree. They can see when things are set for the next committee hearing or where they are in the process. So that link is here, and I'm happy to share this presentation out with the board if you're interested. So as we remember from last year, 213 was a pretty scary bill that had pretty far-reaching effects and a lot of preemptions for a lot of our local ordinances, our local codes, and a lot of our local interests. So I'm just kind of touching on the different pieces, as many of these things came back or are coming back this year in multiple pieces of legislation. So there were two accessory dwelling unit bills. The first is the House Bill 1152. And that listed accessory dwelling use as a use by right, where residential was allowed in metropolitan planning organizations and municipalities greater than 1,000. So we skated on that one. Doesn't directly preempt or apply to us, although we could opt in if we really wanted to. The second bill was a Senate bill, is a Senate bill, and this has similar, I guess, it allows for use by right based on objective administrative standards where allowed by local regulations and zoning. So the real impact of this bill is that it doesn't allow for a subjective review, namely, if somebody went through the process and was either approved or disapproved for an ADU, they would not be allowed to appeal it to a governing board such as yourself. So it would rely on the objective standards as stated in our codes. So based on this, there's no real concern from ComDev. The only slight change it might make would be to our code that does allow for appeals to the board based on some of those decisions. And this bill, as it may apply to us, it still allows for regulation of short-term rentals, and it has some kind of curious language about encouraging local rules regarding affordability. And so it remains to be seen if that means we could actually fully enact a deed-restricted program and limit the use of those ADUs or not. That part's not clear to me.
And is this the one that has a financial incentive, like up to 10 grand for someone to build an ADU?
It talks about reimbursement of fees and I believe provides low-cost financing.
Okay.
But I don't know that it gives money. Another bill or another piece of 213 was a transit-oriented community function, and this has come out in its own separate bill that also applies to MPOs. I'm just going to say MPOs. Is everybody okay with that? I trip over that. So the MPOs are required to develop neighborhood goals based on affordability of housing, and there are all sorts of occupancy per acre requirements that seem pretty unreasonable so far, and that's going through an amendment process, but because we're not in an MPO, we're not that worried about it. I think one point of concern with this piece of legislation is that it references highway user HUTF funds, Highway User Transportation Fund, I think.
I don't know what the T's
HUTF
for.
funds. They're funds collected, and we get like $1.1 million annually of HUTF funds that come back to us.
Based on how many miles of road we have.
And so the concern is that if the state starts using that as a stick to require compliance for whatever, even if it's not this particular bill, then maybe next year it's something else that's a priority of the state. So I think the consensus is it's a concern, but there also has to be some kind of way to encourage compliance. And so I think legislators and bill drafters are open to alternatives, but haven't found anything yet that works better than HUTF funds.
So you're saying we should keep an eye on it because we don't want to reduce the amount of funds we get because they're going to other places?
I would be
Would that be
concerned that the state starts to use those funds to leverage compliance with whatever the program of the year is, whatever it may
Interesting.
be.
Okay.
So As it stands right now, I don't think we're in jeopardy of losing any of those funds based on this.
But we better keep an eye on it just
Yeah.
in case.
Next year it's rollerblading lanes, then who knows?
Knows.
So it's just something to watch.
It gets a little tricky with CCAT because we have municipal, we
You
have
have
some of those
MPOs
front
in-
range, counties that
Yeah,
get
yeah.
wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
A water conservation bill that came through was turf irrigation. We spoke about this a month or 6 weeks ago. And this was amended to remove HOAs, but it does limit the installation of non-functional turf on government property. So I think this gets at things like, I don't know, bluegrass in the median of a highway that gets watered just because it's there. So there are exclusions for parks, athletic fields, playgrounds. All the concerns that we talked about last time have been written in as amendments, so they should be exempt from that, and we wouldn't be at risk of losing our playgrounds and sports fields and things like that. So that's been sent to the governor, not signed as of the last time I looked.
You never know.
Yeah, I truthfully didn't look at that one today, so who knows. Residential occupancy limits. So this is on to its second reading in the Senate. I guess that was yesterday. And so this it's been amended to address, I think, Patty, these were some of your concerns about wastewater accessibility, fire codes, life safety, and water availability. So we cannot prohibit occupancy limits aside from those exemptions. So I think that's a
So when they're
positive thing.
pushing the limits, we can say no,
Sounds like it.
which makes sense
Absolutely.
in both directions.
Statewide transit bill. So this did a couple things. It's exploring, it creates a committee to explore transit passes that would be valid statewide, which I think for those that would take RAFTA to Bustang to DIA and back, it'd be nice to have one bus pass. I don't know exactly how that shakes out, but it's designed to explore that. It's designed to look at youth fares, ozone reduction, basically a study bill in its first half. It also proposes a tax credit for transit pass purchase, so it's an income tax credit for if I buy a $500 transit pass, then I'm eligible to reimburse part of that on a tax credit. And there's a potential for grant dollars going to RTD and perhaps RAFTA in order to subsidize youth fares for people under the age of 19. So that would be something that RAFTA would administer and seek compensation for. And honestly, it lists RTD by name and then other transit authorities. So I don't know if that applies to RAFTA or not.
Aren't we second in the state behind RTD? Isn't RAFTA second in the state?
Could
I
be.
know it's
Well-
first in the state for rural transportation.
Yeah, the rural, we are the first, maybe in the whole country
We were to
almost.
create one, but I mean now with use. Yeah.
And that'd be great. I think at least every day when I ride the bus, there are kids taking RAFTA to school every day. And I think it's only free.
Up to age
It's
something.
not 19. It's
No,
it's
it's
less
like-
than that. So they still charge like the high schoolers.
So I just took the Bustang down to Denver, and then I took the A train to the airport. The Bustang for a senior rate is $21 from Glenwood to Union Station. I think the regular fare is 28 or something. So it's,
What was the
for
train?
one person going, it's the only way to go. The train only cost $1.35 to the A train for the senior rate
All the way to DIA?
from downtown to
Wow.
DIA. So it's absolutely the easiest way to get to DIA from here is to get yourself to West Glenwood either on RAFTA or in a car. You can park your car there overnight for going on the Bustang to Denver, and
Geez, that much fuel doesn't even get you to Vail Pass, so that's cheap.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting bill. There are two bills talking about strategic growth. That was a big piece of 213 last year. The first of a Senate bill that talks about You know, it places a lot of onus on DOLA and state agencies, and it also asks some things of local agencies, local jurisdictions. So it's asking for a local housing needs assessment every 6 years, a housing action plan, which is an advisory document. This is all pretty vague. And ask for master plan, comp plan updates to include a water supply element and strategic growth element. It seems to be aimed more at municipalities in some counties that don't provide water to the same degree that a municipality might. It's not clear how that part might affect us. And then the strategic growth component to the master plan has an exemption for counties under a certain population level that are showing a decline in their census data, which, as we remember, was us in the last census data. So this has been sent out to ComDev, and we're kind of sorting through exactly what this would add, and what we've already done might already suffice for a lot of these things. And then there's not a stick per se. Maybe it's a carrot disguised. It's a stick disguised as a carrot. It prioritizes grant dollars for compliance based on those requests. So grants regarding land use, planning, housing from DOLA, the Colorado Energy Office, Department of Natural Resources, things like that would kind of be filtered through a compliance lens of how many of these things do we meet, how eligible are we for grant dollars.
So we just got an email today from Margaret Bose from CAST about that
There's a meeting tomorrow about that.
master plan, climate plan.
And the second bill, I don't remember if we're discussing both with Margaret tomorrow or only one or the other. The Strategic Growth Bill 1366, the House bill, asks for a climate action plan or a climate element to be looped into a master or a comp plan. And talking with Michael Port and with ComDev, we're ahead of the ball here. We already do these things. So it's the same kind of carrot, a grant prioritization for compliance, and as written, no concerns from staff that we found.
I'll forward to you, or maybe if you've gotten CCAT's recent email about, they're compiling some feedback about these two bills, and there is some criticism related to some of the planning elements of it. Like there's an absence of attention towards rental housing, and that there's the timing on needs assessments. It's not flexible enough for communities who are like doing them now for them to, carry over, or to align with housing needs assessments required in other bills. So it's just sloppy in some of these ways. And then some other criticism has been that it can put counties who want to do affordable housing at a disadvantage related to water and sewer as opposed to municipalities. And that is sensitive for some counties.
And was this more for 174?
It was for both. If you look at the email that Julia sent today, it's defined for the two bills.
I remember 1366 asked for the climate part of the master plan like January of 2025. Was that when it started? Or end of 24? It was really soon.
Yeah.
And
So for people who are doing master plans now, ordinarily they'd wait 5 years or something to do that again.
yeah, I think we were hoping for a 2-year extension is what Tamara was lobbying for, or to push that start date back a couple
Yeah.
years.
How many counties are part of CAST versus ski towns, since it's Colorado Association of Ski Towns?
I would have to get back to you with
Yeah,
that.
no, you can get back to me. I was just wondering.
Look
It's
it up.
quite a few, though.
Yeah, because I remember when we first did it, we were one of the first counties. This was a couple years ago, and then we stepped out, now we're back in.
Yeah, I don't know off the top
I want
of
them
my
to change their name to Colorado Association of Ski Counties.
I remember seeing that,
Our communities.
I remember recently just seeing that chart. It was how many towns in Colorado, how many counties in Colorado, and then how many, there were like 6 from out of state, different ski resort
Park
communities.
City and,
I'd just point out that CASC has more of an après-ski feel to it.
Ooh.
Acronym, right?
Well, and it used to do a little more après-ski the night before and the night of meetings. That when I went to the meetings, that was that how it
Well,
was.
we're not currently listed anyway, so I don't know what
Oh,
other.
really?
We're not on there? Oh, well, we better, I knew where there was something missing.
See it member. Oh, Chaffey County, Pitkin County, Eagle County, Gunnison County, Grand County.
Summit?
I mean, California counties, Routt County, Summit County,
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of counties.
Teton County, Wyoming. I just called out the Colorado counties.
Well, you have to stop. I got to 10.
Take your shoes off.
Then you turn your hand around.
Construction defects is another kind of
Oh, that was a-
hot button discussion point. And as I remember this kind of coming up, is that it was in principle designed to encourage developers to construct multifamily units to kind of help with affordability issues. They felt that the litigation and insurance costs were so high that developers weren't motivated to develop multifamily dwellings. So I think this came from Ted at the Colorado Home Builders, is kind of where I remember first hearing about this. And so as a result, we got a couple different bills. The first of a Senate bill, right to remedy, which provides developers the right to remedy defects when they're discovered. So it sounds like they have the option to just repair it instead of going to litigation. They can fix whatever the problem is. This bill requires 60% of units in a multifamily area to agree to pursue action, which has raised some concerns, because if I live on one end and you live on the other end and only one end has the problem, how do you rally 60% of owners in any given unit structure to agree to this? Originally it was, I think, 66%, 2/3, and they've amended it to 60%, which a lot of people still find unacceptably high. And this bill is perceived as more developer friendly as opposed to claimant friendly. So CCAT currently recommends this as amend, and not speaking for CCAT, but it sounds like it will go, I would be surprised if it stayed in amend. I think the amendments will not suffice the concerns, and I'd imagine it would go to oppose at some point.
So,
Maybe Kelly's been in these
yeah,
meetings.
Kelly, do you have input on it?
No, I haven't been super up to speed on these things. There's some like bigger picture sort of arguments about whether construction defect lawsuits are really a cause of the lack of condominium development in Colorado. There's other arguments on the table where like actually like real estate investment systems have made it more profitable to have rental instead of condominiumized construction for those investors. And so that has arguably what has caused the trade-off in condo developments in Colorado, because the laws here are not markedly more strict than other states. So those are just some of the big picture things. So there's also a bill, I don't know if that's the next one you're talking about, like a study bill to really try and understand like what has caused the stall in condominium development in Colorado before jumping to conclusions about this.
It's on the next page.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then, some of the reaction to Colorado's construction defect law, structure has been buildings just stay as rentals until they get through the statute of limitations. And then, and to be quite honest, this is something the city of Aspen has considered with like the lumberyard project and other projects. So.
Yeah, my concern would be, okay, so we can't afford to build these condominium units because of the cost, because of liability, insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So take that away from us and we're gonna build a better building. No. I would be concerned that then they're just gonna throw a building together and say, we're not gonna have a responsibility at the end of the day. Yeah, because, even people that have a single-family dwelling that's built, and there's, what happened at Burlingame with the first phase of Burlingame with Shaw, I think it was, construction. And it came back to bite everybody. So, yeah, so I think this is when you have to be really careful with it. I think really looking at the root cause rather than looking at just a random fix is probably better to look at the root cause.
So there have been some conversations that have happened at times when I've not been able to join, so I haven't totally followed all these closely. I do think local governments are exempted though, right?
Well, the question is, are they exempted as work that they perform, or are they exempted if we are the claimant? Like, so if we
Which side
hire,
of it?
yeah, which side of it are we exempt from? If we, or say the city of Aspen builds the lumberyard project for sake of an example, and there are construction defects and the city of Aspen is the owner, are they exempted as a claimant, or are they only exempted for work they performed as a builder, as a developer? So
Sounds like there's a lot of questions.
I think you're right, exempted as developers,
Right.
but I haven't seen anything that would exempt us from being a claimant for poor work.
And I mean, interestingly, the city's never taken the role as claimant, as I've understood. They've always been on the defense. Yeah. Anyway, so I don't know.
Yeah, 106 has a bunch of concerns. I think the way the verbiage is written in in the bill, there's some concern about how the builder chooses to remedy the defect, and then does any follow-up claim from the claimant affect the root cause or the repair that the builder performed? So if your drywall cracked and I fixed your drywall, are you limited to claims against that drywall repair and not the leaky roof that caused it? And so there's some lawyers on the different housing committees that are really concerned about the way the verbiage is written, and that it may really limit consumer rights, which is why I added that little line in there. So CCAT recommends amend, and like I said, I think that will go to oppose just based on the way it's written. The unit numbers required from different multifamily units, and that's my guess as to where that would go. The following bill, protections for real property owners, is kind of the consumer or claimant-friendly version of this, which is curious because I think it wasn't really why the legislation was hatched to begin with, was to give consumers more rights. It was more to protect developers, but this extends the time frame for claims from 6 to 10 years, which may speak to rent until the statute of limitations is passed and then go to ownership. And it also would void contractual limitations on lawsuits against builders where they may say, if you buy this house, your limit of claims is only 18 months. And this would basically render all those void. CCAT is a monitor on this, and I don't imagine that changing, is my guess. And then this was the bill, Kelly, you just mentioned, the Construction Insurance Transparency Study Bill. Conduct a study to better understand prohibitive insurance costs for developers building multifamily residences. So I think the only opposition I've heard voiced to this revolves around people who are pretty adamant that we already know there's a problem, let's not study it anymore, let's fix it. But then, of course, you have people on both sides who don't agree on what the problem is, or if it's even the underlying cause of the problem. So I think,
I think the problem is this, you think the problem's that, and we're gonna fix it this way, that's not.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, and then there's different motivations, right? So like some of the more urban counties would like to see more condo, as opposed to luxury rental. They'd rather have more of their population having opportunity to own and getting into sort of that area of, entry-level housing. So there's some of that push and pull happening too.
It seems typical of the legislature to, if there's a difficult situation, rather than spend the time and try to iron out the differences right then, they make it a study bill. It's like, that's their form of punting
Say
it.
they did something, but we're not really sure what we're doing.
Yeah.
Save face.
I feel like I have sat here long enough to see some of those study bills like become an actual bill.
Do something, yeah, yeah.
You know, so it's not the worst.
It's coming up a lot more though, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so CCAT is currently monitor, and the only reason I mention this is that it's really been a hot topic the last few weeks. And so I imagine if the board has a strong feeling one way or the other, if they'd like to amend, monitor, support either of these three, CCAT may ask for that opinion at some point. And we can always just abstain and let people with really strong feelings make the decision too. Oh, air quality. These, none of them directly impact us, but I think they pretty well align with some of our climate ideology and some of our overall values. So I just mentioned them here and put some links in case you all are interested in following up with them. Air quality improvements. Adopting rules to control source emissions during the ozone period, May 1st to October 30th in the Denver Metro Northern Front Range not attainment area. So if I remember, the verbiage is something like in-use off-road diesel engines. So it kind of focuses on gas pre-production. And then oil and gas pre-production operations in the non-attainment area must pause during the ozone period. So I think that's a pretty impreciously ambitious ask, to ask oil and gas pre-production to cease from May to October, but that's what's in there. The second bill, air
Isn't
quality.
there potentially a ballot initiative to prohibit oil and gas in Colorado altogether?
Yeah, I think this congresswoman is proposing that.
I think that's also
Not proposing it, I should
impressively
say.
ambitious.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah,
Air quality enforcement. This is to increase fines for repeat violators of emissions. This is kind of directed at the Suncor refinery there, Commerce City, I think it is. And there was some concern that the fines they were receiving were being used to repair facilities that were kind of the cause of the violation. So they got fined $10 million and then spent $8 million repairing equipment that would have prevented the violations. It was just this super obscure way of fining. So this increases the fines pretty substantially to 50 to 75% of the maximum allowable fines. And it's just kind of a,
so if we're fine, we're gonna
Seems
use that money anyway to fix what we needed to fix, so we don't have, yeah.
so didn't end up being really much of a penalty.
I will say I did bring our SAF idea to Adams County Commission, a couple Adams County commissioners. And I got the impression that their relationship with Suncor is not collaborative in that way.
Weird.
So they're it's very contentious.
Does Suncor make sustainable aviation fuel?
No, but they have the
Oh.
refinery that ships
could-
the fuel out to the airport. So we talked about it as
Oh.
being potentially
I
a
was gonna say, I
great,
didn't think we had yeah.
you know.
I do see that sign, Suncor on tankers. A lot.
Air quality ozone levels. So ozone levels in areas that don't meet the national standard. This is the same non-attainment area on the Front Range. Focuses on getting light duty cars and trucks to emit less emissions in that non-attainment area. It creates a rebate program for retailers and consumers for small engines like electric chainsaws and electric lawn care equipment and things like that. And then provide some grants for fleet electric vehicle conversions, including some government access. So that could create some funds as long as it's not just limited to those governments in that non-attainment area. So again, not anything that directly impacts us or preempts anything that we're doing, but I think they're kind of interesting climate bills that, you know, it's definitely a priority for us. So I thought I would mention them here.
Be interesting to see how they could manage the focus on emissions of light-duty trucks and cars in non-attainment areas. So if I drove my light-duty truck through the non-attainment and I didn't meet those standards, yeah,
Seems like a moving target.
It literally, yeah. Oh,
Just a few more follow-ups. The short-term rental taxation changes hasn't gone to committee yet. Senator Hansen is ever the optimist that he can get something through. It's facing pretty brutal opposition. As it's written now, 90 days rented goes to commercial lodging, and we've kind of covered how difficult it could be to really narrow that down. The 3 different options have been considered for amendments. One is to up the number to 181 days, kind of the standard of non-primary residence. 200 days because somebody picked that out of a hat, I think. And the third is the old study bill routine. So,
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, the working group I've been on does support trying to get a study bill at least passed for this. Ideally, we'd get some threshold for like the max, like 181 days, like something that's just obviously a commercial property, and define that. But kind of putting the rest of it into more of a study bill, really to figure out how the Department of Taxation would interface with the assessor's offices to implement, to deal with implementation concerns about this, and to more further study like what the actual STR use is based on days and rates, et cetera, in counties across the state.
that's already tracking it.
Yeah. So, yeah, and would still count that as a win, but that has been stagnant for a while.
yeah, I think most of the associations are kind of seeking to amend and listing that as a position in good faith that there's got to be a way we could get to amend to support. And if a study bill is it, that's great.
And I just want to raise another, there is another short-term rental taxation bill out there that would let people have their primary and a secondary home would be considered residential, regardless of whatever their use is for that secondary home. Any tertiary or more home would be looked at for commercial tax based on its use. And there's people oppose that because most of Summit County is second homes to somebody in Colorado, and they're being used
Everything
as
would be
commercial
exempt.
short-term rentals. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that
that's
one
part
is
of the
just
discussion. I don't
would
know
be
what's wrong with
impossible to enforce, and
Yeah, and
Right.
where do you find their third and fourth tertiary?
Mm-hmm.
that. Right. Yeah.
in which state, under which LLC,
Yeah, exactly.
how much usage. That one is kind of,
Yeah, that's
it
hard.
seemed to me like spaghetti on a wall. That was so, it's not as impressive. Something that might interest us just on a values perspective is a tax rebate for digital assets bill. And it's kind of oddly worded, but this provides sales and use tax rebates for equipment and infrastructure for data centers, basically those huge centers of servers that are huge power consumers and huge water users.
How are they huge water users?
They use water to cool the
cool
equipment. And there are all sorts of fun articles out there about millions of gallons per day of water being used to cool. It's just staggering
no
the amount of
idea.
energy and the amount of water being used. So as two things that are always on our radar, we've spent a lot of time and energy, pun intended, on outdoor energy code and water use and things like that. This just might be something that's interesting. I think it's designed to encourage businesses to bring those operations here to create jobs and create income and taxes and all those things, but might be worth considering the offsets.
Okay, Levi, are you just about done here? Because we've
Just
got
about.
starting to get people lined up for their interviews for citizen boards.
I thought 30 minutes would be plenty, but I guess I'm babbling.
Especially with just the three of us. Can you imagine if there were 5 of us?
Wildfire mitigation, I'll just kind of pick up the pace. This is proposed to affect 12 counties that would require wildfire mitigation upon the sale of homes. And so we're not one of the named counties, but it's kind of worth watching.
And I think this was laid over by the sponsors for additional reflection.
Oh, it hasn't been PI'd yet, though?
No, I don't think they're quite giving up on the idea, but they heard a lot of the counties that I think would have supported this oppose it because they don't see how to enforce it in their counties.
Yeah, it seemed pretty unfair. I think the sponsors wrote it saying something like, because of your expertise in wildfire mitigation upon the construction of new homes, we want to force you to do it to sale of existing homes. And it was a pretty big equity concern.
It'd be great if it was permissible. That would be a good authority to have.
And these are within my last few. You mentioned the SAF facility, reduce aviation impacts on communities. I'm looking at, use taxes on leaded fuel as a way to inspire our transition away from leaded aviation fuel. We provided some verbiage. I don't know, Kelly was going to
Yeah, I
provide
can
that to
talk
the
about that.
sponsor about maybe allowing us to increase fines and then a way to use some of those funds to help fund a sustainable aviation fuel site. Even if not here, Grand Junction, Colorado Springs, wherever it may be.
Well, we have to look at being able to use those funds off airport.
I know.
That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, that might be a little ambitious, but I will say, so I've been working with another commissioner in Arapahoe County, and this initially was really only going to affect Centennial Airport and one other. And so she heard from a bunch of counties, like, we'd like to allow these incentives, to be able to apply for these incentives for our airport. Again, most of it's directed towards transition from leaded to unleaded fuel and deals with some noise stuff. So I have been talking with her about expanding the bill to go to smaller airports that could include Picken, to call out SAF as one path to moving from leaded to unleaded fuel, and to include language that Rye provided to me about which would let us beef up our noise enforcement that we've wanted to do for a long time.
Interesting.
So, so she and I worked through some of that, and then I haven't sent it to the sponsors yet, but I'm going to start doing that to try and get amendments in the bill that would benefit us more directly.
Cool. Equal access to public meetings. This extends the notice and accessibility requirements to citizen boards and committees or any board or committee where recommendations to the governing body may be discussed. So that could impact all 19 of our citizen boards with notice requirements, remote access, things like that. So that's out there. We're set up better than a lot of places because we already have this wonderful infrastructure here. So
But a lot of our committees don't meet in this room.
So that's just out there. And then I guess the last piece, this was just signed by the governor, local government property tax credits rebates. I think you all may have seen an email from an excited citizen that was psyched we got this across. Local jurisdictions to enact property tax incentive programs for areas of local concern. So any program that the governing body thought was important to the local jurisdiction could have a program through tax rebates. So I think that's a great thing.
This was the one we got with childcare?
Yeah, and it was initially inspired, so Summit drove this for affordable housing to try and incentivize private developers to do affordable housing.
And that is the end of what I had, but I talked through all of the time I was hoping to hear from you about any other priorities you've heard about, any other issues you'd like to engage on, further concerns. You can always just email me after you've had some time to click on all the links and explore the bill trackers and all those kind of things. If there are any other things I can look at, just let me know.
No, this is good information, thanks.
Well, at the moment, but I think maybe looking at different things, there's lots of different bill tracking things. There's one for aging issues in Colorado that I follow also. And then there's ones that track ag issues that typically don't come to CCI or CCAT.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if any of us find anything, let's get the bill numbers to Levi to check into things.
Sure. And I can share this with you and then just click on the links. It will go to all the trackers. It should have all the legislation we're watching, and just let me know what to add and what to watch and when to bang my shoe on the table.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Levi. I
Thank you.
appreciate your digging into all of these things
Bet.
and staying on top of it there's so much going on, and it's difficult to follow all of it without like doing it full time.
It's impossible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've never read so much in my life.
All right, thank you. So moving on, we'll go to our citizen board interviews. So first up, we have Tom Marshall, who has applied to be on the senior council. And
Tom, you can come on up.
yeah, you could come up to one of these two and just make sure that's turned on for him, Charlotte.
It is. That seat's probably a little more comfortable there.
And Charlotte, do you want to explain what the procedure here?
Sure. Make a comment just on the last guy was here. I read this article that says, you have a private jet, you can only write it off if you're going to a business meeting. Have you ever heard that?
That
know
would be
anything about
There's
right.
no way of,
wonderful.
there's no way of,
We'll have to look into that.
If you have that link, Tom, if you could get
Huh?
it to us,
If you could get us the
Um,
article?
no.
but maybe,
I just
You know,
came across, it was
Tom-
probably on my phone.
Tom, if you could bring that to the senior council meeting tomorrow, you
I
could get it
can.
to me. Are you able to come
I don't know
tomorrow?
where you would find it, but it came on my phone that, you know, private jets can write off the plane if they're using it for business, which makes sense.
It does
but
sound sensible.
There's a lot of
to me.
business in this town.
Yeah, but it's probably geared on, the jet was bought through the business, so you'd have to use it for business activities, not personal activities, rather than buying a jet for personal activities only. It doesn't count on those anyway, so, interesting. We'll have to have somebody Google it and see if they can find it.
Yeah, we'll try to find out more about that, Tom.
Yeah.
Thank you. Charlotte, go ahead.
Okay, so we have Mr. Tom Marshall here. He's applying for a position on the Senior Services Council. Senior Services Council has 8 regular vacancies and 6 alternate vacancies, so
Wow.
we like to see folks apply.
How big is the council total?
There's 12 regulars and up to 6 alternates. So I will let you all ask some questions of Mr. Marshall and go from there.
Okay. Well, Tom, thank you so much for applying to be on the council. And at the last senior council meeting, I was there and Tom was there visiting. And then at the conclusion of the meeting, Patty was helping him fill out the application form. So
Well,
I was pleased to have one more sort of semi-retired gentleman besides myself attending those meetings. So Tom, could you tell us why, kind of what's your thinking about being on the Senior Services Council?
well, I helped out at the senior center. Mary got me into driving when you could private individual, or wrong, for private individuals to drive people to doctor's appointments and all that. And that's where I got involved in it, you know. And, you know, I'm 90 years old. I lived in this town for 60 years. And, you know, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer with a computer and all that stuff. But, you know, it's something I can do, you know, just for the community. And, you know, I think I'm on the board of appeals. I was in that. And it, you know, I mean, you should give back from what you've got. And that's my take on it.
All right. Patty?
Hi, Tom.
Hi there.
How are you?
Good.
I've known Tom for probably 44 years.
I couldn't remember back when.
And I've known Tom's family since I got here. So I just thank you for wanting to be involved in this board. And I can't think of anybody better to be sitting with Steve at those meetings.
Well, I'll do what I can. I did, on the other board, I sat on the, when we had a clean air board.
Yes.
Yeah.
Used to meet over at City Hall.
Then we abandoned it because the air was clean. And I know Teresa Hall, who's on there, she's a nurse that my wife worked with, and
And me.
she asked me, and
Yeah, and
Sit down.
Teresa's our chairperson right now.
Yeah, she's
on that.
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you like best about the senior center?
You have to speak a little
Oh, what do you
louder.
like best about the senior center?
At the senior center?
Yeah.
Well, I don't use it much myself. I go to the Ark, and I have a wife and we have meals at home, and so, but I've watched it and I've known people that are up there, and there's activity there. There's a lot of activity, and I've known people that have meals get delivered, and it's a matter of this filling the gap, because getting old is, it shocks the hell out of you when you pick up and say, oh yeah, assisted living is going to cost me $8,000 a month,
Yeah.
just, I think putting out information is what is important.
Good. Great. Thank you.
So, Tom, I don't think that any of us are going to have any problem wanting to appoint you to the board. And we used to have about 10 or more people attending regularly, and then, the attrition, people start doing other things, or they
Yeah.
move away, or they get too old and they just don't have the energy to do it. We
Well-
really appreciate that you're stepping up to the plate at your age of 90, and
But it helps me, to get computer-wise and phone-wise, and, and that keeps your brain turning,
absolutely.
just,
I do have a very important question.
oh yeah, go ahead.
What does Ellen think about this?
She said, fine. I mean, I can't ski anymore, so she goes and skis and, and enjoys it. And she does, works on the election board and does a few things. And we've got
Always see her.
2 grandkids, and yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure we had Ellen's okay.
No, I think that is taken care of.
Okay, good. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Tom and I have a common thing that we both have driven snowcats for the ski company, and I think we both got a lot of pleasure out of that too.
Yeah. Yeah, we did way back when Neil Beck and
Oh, gosh.
Larry Beidelman and myself, the ski company sent us to Haystack, and we spent, I can't remember, spent the whole year there,
It's
half
a couple of winters, I think.
Huh?
Wasn't it 2
Studying
winters?
it for development. And, it was going along, and Bob, his dad, did not want to have anything to do with a ski area out there. And, and he just did all these irritable things like shovel bush snow in front of our truck and everything like that. And, one of the sobering things, you can think about now is, what if we had built snowmass up at Haystack. That wouldn't have been my decision, but, you know,
I heard somebody's doing a documentary on Dave Farney. Yeah, he's in town this weekend.
I don't think
Farney
Barney,
was the one on backside at,
yeah,
he
Little
was Hayden, I
Annie's.
think. Was he?
Yeah, Little Annie's, and he went to
Little Annie's.
Telluride, I think.
Now he lives in Fruta.
Yeah.
His grandson lives next door to me at the trailer park, Luke.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for applying for this
Tom, good to
board,
see
and
you.
we have a whole slew of people we need to
Okay.
appoint or reappoint, and I think we'll be making a decision real
Oh.
soon on this.
Yeah. No problem.
Tell Ellen I said hi.
I will.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So next up, we have applying for renewal on the Open Space and Trails Board is Howie Mallory. Howie, you want to come up?
Where should I come to?
Why don't you sit over on the corner there?
Either one, yeah.
Hang around, Tom.
Why? Get put on another board? Good to see you.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Good to
What
see you.
little I can see.
Thank you.
So Howie, if you ever get tired of serving on the Open Space and Trails Board, we have a spot reserved for you on the Senior Services Council.
Oh, I
can do
thought it
both.
might have been the cemetery board.
So you've been on this board for quite a few terms now, and you have a huge amount of experience. Why do you want to re-up for another term now? And tell us a little bit about your experiences on the Open Space and Trails Board.
Well, thank you for letting me reapply. It's meant a lot to me to be part of the Open Space and Trails experience. I reread the mission statement before coming in, and I'd just like to quickly review that with the board. The mission is to acquire, preserve, maintain, and manage open space properties for multiple purposes, including but not limited to recreational, wildlife, agricultural, scenic, and access purposes, and to acquire, preserve, develop, and maintain managed trails for similar purposes. That's the easy part, I think, in terms of it's being very clear and direct about what we're doing. But what I found that what really is compelling me to be delighted to serve for another 5-year period. Is it 5 years?
I don't know. Seems like forever, doesn't
It
it?
does seem like. Is it 5 years?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'll make sure this is the last 5 years, if you're so inclined. Is that I think beneath and behind serving on the board is the responsibility to acquire, maintain, and expand the public trust in what we're trying to do. It's what I just read are all pretty much objective statements, but the trust of how we spend our generous tax dollars. We're the fourth largest tax receiving entity, I believe, but behind the school and CMC. So it's a huge fiscal responsibility on our part, and I think we've been very, very frugal and appropriately responsible in those expenditures. Obviously, Snowmass Falls is a great example of us positioning ourselves to be able to do that. But we can't take the public for granted, and I think my experience of knowing that we've got to be mindful of the public trusts that our decisions will be prudent and fiscally responsible, and that end is important. Plus, the public will trust that we adhere to our guidelines, the conservation easement guidelines, the tenets of those that we've been able to acquire. Sometimes as you move on in doing business, if you will, in the Open Space Board, you may be a little hazy about what the original objectives were of certain acquisitions of conservation easements or property in and of themselves, or even building trails and things like that. That leads to something else I think is facing us, is a challenge of how we match and we deal with the objectives of our conservation objectives with the demands and impact from recreational desires on our properties, on trails and the open space themselves. North Star is a good example. That to me is an ongoing challenge that I would like to be a part of, somewhat of the resolution down the road. So that's sort of a general answer to your questions, Steve.
Patty?
Yeah, thanks, Howie, for all your years of service. And I have to say, I love it when you zoom in from France. Because there's an 8-hour difference, and he always has a good glass of wine, and we're sitting having Pepsi or Diet Pepsi or something at our lunches. So.
It has a colorant in it.
But anyway, I found in reading your application, your reapplication, you made a point about having more open space and trails board meetings throughout the county, and I think that is something worth considering. So that, especially if we're dealing with an issue that may be in Emma, so the Emma constituency has access. Has the board talked about that as a whole?
No, we really haven't done that too much. We've had a few meetings, particularly with AVLT Mid-Valley, but that was really kind of to accommodate their board. Yeah, I think it's something we'd be delighted to.
I think that's something we should really seriously consider. Thanks.
Emma or certainly up to Crystal.
Yeah, or anywhere that we might have an issue that's pending. So I think that's a great idea. And I understand you're wanting to see some resolution at some of our issues that we have ongoing right now, and I'd love to have you on board.
Well, thank you. I'd be delighted to. I went out today and did a little site visit along the Rio Grande.
Oh, nice.
And
Beautiful day.
with Gary and Graham down at the Brush Creek Intercept lot.
Yeah.
I was really sort of surprised. I've always known it was this, but when you're there, you see really how almost industrial that area is. Big parking lot, big high tension wires.
Those
Power lines are big in there. Gas lines going through there, buses, and of course the airplanes coming over. So, I think it would serve a utilitarian purpose to be better connected across the river.
Well, and there's that great old cottonwood tree that used to be right along the highway. That used to be a great raptor roosting area.
Right,
And when that came down, that lost a lot of flavor in that neck of the woods.
Well, I would love to see more ospreys.
Me too. Anywhere in the
particularly
valley.
up at North Star.
Yeah, my favorite bird. Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kelly?
I have a little bit of a provocative question.
I'll put my seatbelt on.
Okay. So I'm curious if you've had people say this to you recently, but I have had some people say to me, maybe we're good on open space. Maybe we funded open space enough, and we should fund other things, like housing or other things instead. And I'm curious as to what you would say to those people.
That is a provocative question.
He's taking his seatbelt
Of
off
course,
and
I
leaving the
support your
room.
renewal. I mean, you're a
Well,
wonderful.
Kelly, it's a good
person on the
question.
board.
In a sort of a macro sense, I'm of the opinion we don't have the resources, and I'm not sure the taxpayers want to spend the money to acquire all the open space that comes available. We're sort of bidding against ourselves. The more we acquire, the less their supply is, the price goes up. So that's a factor right there. With respect to other uses of the tax dollars, the mill levy dollars that we receive, I think when the open space program was created, it was very clear that the purpose was for open space and trails in the mission statement I described. There's nothing in the mission statement that talks about diverting the funds for general public affordable housing. Mm-hmm. So I understand the public's question, and it's the right question to ask. We haven't, in fact, housed some of our employees in some of the properties we bought that have pre-existing housing, up the Crystal and at Deer Ranch on just up valley from Aspen Valley Ranch, or I guess Aspen Valley Ranch. So I think we're doing our part to house our staff. which continues to grow as our management requirements expand, as our open space holdings expand.
Thank you. I think that's great
Okay.
reply. Thank you.
Just to put an idea into your head, and maybe it could become a collective thinking process by the Open Space and Trails Board. I've often thought that the part of the solution to overcrowding at any place, whether it be hiking at Maroon Lake or paddleboarding at, east of Aspen, is for people to go other places. So in terms of the North Star Preserve, the Parks and Wildlife just closed the Beaver Lake up in Marble to people to go out there on flotation devices and paddleboards.
Right.
That was one other place people could go and do that wasn't at North Star. So that's one place in the valley taken away from recreational users for doing that activity. So maybe we need to develop other or find other spots where people could go do some water recreation and not have to all feel like they have to go to North Star, which to me, North Star, the main reason for having it is for the wildlife habitat, not for the human recreation aspect. So finding those kind of spots where people could recreate and not be overwhelming a special place like that,
Yeah.
it could be part of the mission or something that your board could find some potential solutions.
I think that's a very good idea to look at and take advantage of some other opportunities that might present them. Maybe Elam gravel pit will stop operating. There's a hole in the ground. Though I personally would, with respect to the issue you're raising, suggest that maybe we look at North Star on a much more permitted basis, as opposed to just unregulated access. Permitted could be as specific, similar to what occurs up at Conundrum Hot Springs. Even Maroon Bells are somewhat permitted. The hikes around there, so that philosophy is existing, or eliminate free parking along the road, and you have to pay to park up there. That hasn't been well received, and I brought it up at the board, but I'll continue to bring it up because I think otherwise, that way we might be able to reduce the traffic and the impacts along it. So ideas that don't necessarily try to build our way out of the problem, we try to manage what's there already. Or we could take a look at the monastery, build a dam and flood the monastery. Then you could
He'd be right in his backyard.
exactly. You could have your own dock.
You and Molly could be out there.
But
paddleboarding.
seriously, that is a good point, and it's interesting. We haven't looked at acquiring water features like that as part of our mission. We haven't talked about it as part of our recreation objectives.
Okay. Well,
Well, I know what I want to do with Howie. I don't know about the rest of you, but
yeah, I think, Howie, we've all really been impressed with the job that you and the entire board has been doing. So we appreciate the time you've put in over the years, and appreciate the fact that you want to re-up for one more
time. One more time. Thank
next
you.
time that
Really-
instead of going to France, you can just bring the wine to the meeting. How's that?
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Howie.
Nice
All
to
right,
see
any
you.
questions? Thank you.
So we'll get back to everybody with the.
April 2nd, I'll bring back
Okay.
decisions. And
So next up,
Jackie?
we have Jackie Merrill. Jackie is applying, one of, I think, we have 6 people who have applied for the vacancy on the
have-
Airport Advisory Board.
we have a total of 7.
7?
Yeah, we got a whole bunch of applications last week, so still in process of scheduling those and getting those interviews done. But yes, we have one alternate position, And Jackie has applied, so she's here for you today.
Okay. So, and that vacancy was created when Rick Heedy resigned, because he's spending a lot of time out of state, other places.
Yes, he
And we
resigned.
And we moved
Michael
an
up.
alternate up into the regular position, so that
Correct.
created the alternate position. So, just so you know that
Yeah.
if 7 have applied, 6 people will be disappointed, and it will be a tough decision for
Yes.
us. So, Jackie, do your best. This is your opportunity. So could you tell us your experience on, the committees you've been on and the work you've done, and why you want to serve on the Airport Advisory Board?
First thing I want to say is I want to be in line for Tom's position when the time comes.
We got lots of vacancies on that.
Yes.
So, well, let's see, I think my interest in the airport started out when I was on the Vision Committee. And that took a while to recover from, and so I didn't immediately apply to the AAB. I thought I'd see what was happening, attend some meetings, and I feel like since I'm attending the meetings, I asked myself, do I want to have a vote? And I said yes, and so I humbly submit my exuberance, my experience as a public-spirited citizen. The resume that I attached for Charlotte is ridiculously long. It was just happened to be the one that I could access immediately. But I'm interested in the airport. I have no personal NIMBY issues about it. I live on the west side of West Buttermilk, so anything that happens at the airport doesn't impact me. So my interest is simply as a public-spirited citizen. Given my age, I've had some experience with nonprofits, and it seemed like a natural step when this vacancy came up.
Yeah, I was impressed with the number of nonprofits you've served on over the
Yeah.
years, and not just in one area, but in, a variety of things that you participated in. That's commendable.
Thank you.
I have I
Patty?
just wanted to clarify, thank you for that email.
Which
And
one?
The one that you sent to Francie and myself.
Oh, yes.
I just want you to know, Francie and I talked about it yesterday. The reason I didn't respond was because I knew Francie had already addressed
Yes.
it.
No,
Just
I
wanted to let
didn't.
you know that.
I was not holding it against
Okay,
you.
no, I just wanted to clarify because I met with Francie yesterday. But I want to thank you for applying, and your resume is very impressive. I loved it. So it is going to be a tough decision because we have a very diverse group that has applied for this. And I also appreciate it when you do letters to the editor or when you do opinions in the paper. I think this board is always welcoming to comments from the general populace in helping us to create a
Good.
better decision at the end of the day. So thank you.
Bravo to you all.
Yeah, so it's a tough issue with dealing with the airport right now, and hopefully we'll get it moving forward. And are there any specific concerns you might have as to directions that we may be taking with the airport?
I think, well, as I've been sort of called of different kinds of volunteer work, and always my thread has been, let's make sure all the options are aired. And you probably, I guess, if you do your sleuthing, I wrote a opinion piece last June about there were some pros and cons that weren't, I thought, felt being given proper consideration. So that's sort of my philosophy, let's look at all the options, and certainly let's make sure the community understands the options. At this point, I think there's so much confusion. It's extremely frustrating for someone like me that wants things to be clear and wants people to move ahead.
I think it's frustrating for all of us. So thank you.
Yeah.
Kelly?
Hi, nice to
Hi,
see
Kelly.
you. Yeah. I really enjoyed seeing your reproductive rights work in the past and from the late 60s. I'd love to hear your perspective at some time from that trajectory to today.
Yes,
maybe over
indeed.
coffee or something. I did wonder, related to the Airport Advisory Board, do you think there's, do you think the board is balanced? Do you think there's any missing perspectives around the table?
Well, one of the things I'm curious about, and it may be past history, and I should have probably done some homework before I asked this question, but I thought there was a time when the county administration were asked or delegated or expected to do some research on local control of the FBO. And either because I don't know my way around the internet enough, I have never seen either a statement that said that wasn't done or evidence that it was. So that's one thing that
Sure.
that I'm interested in. And I mean, I think the whole debate about what to do about the airport is not only scrambled, but confusing to the public. So I would like to see, and I expect to write more letters to the editor that I hope will serve to say, this is the fact as I see it, and someone tell me if it isn't.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So are there any lessons you can bring from the Vision Committee when you were serving on that that you would use if you get on the Airport Advisory Board? Because it's kind of a continuation of the Vision
Yeah.
Committee.
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that I feel in a better position to be a more contributing member. I mean, I was so lost in so much of the information that we were being given in the Vision Committee. And even when I voted, I felt like an irresponsible citizen because I didn't feel I knew as much as I should. So now all these years have gone by and I've had some time to pay attention and attend the AAB meetings, that I feel like I can be more incisive with my questions and my comments, and much more confident in saying why what you're telling us is important. Why is it important? Put it in perspective. Don't just give a narration about the repairs or something, but get to what's really behind the fact that something's being raised.
Okay. Any other questions from the board right now?
No, but I think she's our first of the 7, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
We go on till like
so,
9th or
and
something.
because we're having to go out into April to schedule these interviews, this
take a little
board
longer.
will probably, the decision won't come until after April
Right.
16th.
Well, you've got
I think that's
Yeah,
our
so-
last
got some
interview.
work to do.
So Greg and Francie are not here today,
I know,
but they
I
will
know.
be, and I'm sure that all of us will look at all of the interviews again once we've interviewed all 7, just to refresh. I mean, I know I will have to do that just to refresh my memory on each person's interview.
Right. Would
So-
you expect you'll call some of us back when they're all here, or will you just
No,
do it?
they'll watch them. They'll watch the tapes, and then Charlotte always
yeah.
hooks
Provide
us
a
up.
Yeah,
link.
well, this is all being
She always
recorded
sends
by
us
grassroots.
She sends
and-
us the links when we're making our decisions, so we can click on them and watch them again if need be.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, so we don't have the
How was all
benefit.
this before we had all these links for you guys?
It was different.
We don't have the benefit of Francie and Greg here to ask you questions, but they will see your,
Well, they can
your
ask me
response,
questions
what you've
anytime they want.
talked about and everything.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is, due to well, one of the things you probably found out is I am a trained storyteller, and I go into the Basalt and Aspen schools and tell stories, and was against my will recruited to be board chair of Spellbinders. And So one of the things that interests me in general, living here for some 35 years, is being an elder and what an elder means. As guardians of the stories, keepers of the wisdom. And I feel, I just had a talk with the ED of KJAX this morning, who was new to the area and young. And, you know, she really wants to understand the history of this community. And my history started with Mortimer Adler when he was living in San Francisco, and I took, well, I think we're off topic. But anyway, my father and I, when I was in boarding school in high school, took a great books course from Mortimer Adler. And that changed my world when it came to lifelong learning, followed by John Peacock and John Anderson seminars, community seminars. So I feel there's a certain value in the perspective and the experience that someone at 85 has to offer. And so I'm living my life as an elder with some exuberance and some curiosity in terms of how we can be most valuable on any situation.
Okay,
great, thank
so
you.
speaking of spellbinders, will you be at the Liars contest this Saturday?
I'm not sure. I've forgotten what date it is, but I haven't
It's
responded.
this coming Saturday at 4 o'clock at
Oh,
Mountain
yeah,
Chalet.
that was the problem. You know, I've been there before. Isn't that a great thing?
Yeah, and I will be, once again, will be one of the 3 judges, getting duped by the great storytellers.
Well, what could be more fun, Steve? Is that any different than being here?
I was wondering the same thing.
Well, Jackie,
Hopefully
thank you.
people don't
Thank
feel
you.
as free to lie here.
Yes, hopefully.
Or they think we don't get it when they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, thanks for your continuing interest in the airport and
Thank
for
you.
attending the AAB meetings as an interested citizen.
This coming
And
Thursday.
thanks for applying
I
for the
know,
board.
3 o'clock. Yeah, so, and you're gonna be talking with Amory on Thursday, tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night at the library.
Yeah. Okay, so we will, well, we have to do all the interviews before we make our decision.
I
It'll
know,
be,
I
I think
know,
it'll
I
be
know.
several weeks here.
Well, understandably. Well, thank you
Thank
for
you,
your
Jackie,
time
for
and
your
your
time.
questions.
Cheers.
Okay, next up, we have Sam
I'm gonna ask
Walkham, who has applied to the Redstone Historic Preservation Committee.
He's
Yes.
back for more.
I am. Good afternoon.
So we've had this great interest in the Redstone Historic Preservation Committee all of a sudden, and that's great. We're
Yeah.
excited to get some applications. So you all appointed Taylor on the end of February. So now we have 3 alternate vacancies. And I actually had another application after I wrote my AIS. And so we have 1 other applicant for this position as well. But we have 3 positions
2
open.
applicants, 3 applicants.
2.
Two.
Yeah.
2
So-
applicants for alternate positions.
Yes. So
Okay.
I will let you all.
So Sam, tell us a little bit about your background and your interest in the Redstone
Yes.
area.
Absolutely. Well, I've been in the Aspen area since 2012. Lived the better part of a decade in the downtown core. And I'm a landscape architect. I work for Blue Green. And so I am familiar with the HPC process on the applicant side, certainly in Aspen. And that's something I continue to do in my professional life. And then we moved out to Redstone. This is the end of our 3rd winter. That's how you measure stuff out there.
I've survived 3
Yes.
winters.
And I feel that this would be a meaningful way for me to contribute to the community as an alternate, as is the case, on this HPC.
Well, I could see one benefit of living there and being on a board that holds meetings in Redstone. You're cuts down your travel time, not having to come to Aspen to go to a meeting
That's
all the
right. And
time.
I did notice that in person in Redstone or Zoom, as the case may be. I'm open to all of the new technologies.
Uh-huh. So you still come up to Aspen to work?
I do.
Pretty much every day then during?
Not so much a couple of times a week.
Mhm.
It depends on client meetings or, in person. You can't avoid that a lot of the times, and it's great, but not every day.
Okay,
I have a question.
yeah, Patty.
Yeah.
Isn't landscaping in Redstone hard to do? You have such a short season.
It is challenging. I don't think it's much more challenging than it is here, really. I mean, they're different.
I get a little more sun at my
Different
house
issues.
in town.
Right. Yeah. Less sun, but you need more water up here. So
Yeah,
it's one of the
that's true.
trade-offs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have any specific issues? Redstone's pretty cool. I mean, and maintaining its historic character is really, a
Right.
goal for everybody, I think. So is there any one point of that you seem to have a favorite position on, or?
Just as far as maintaining the character of the historic
Yeah,
structures.
something, or just the whole nature of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the story of Redstone is so intriguing and enchanting, and I've been fascinated with it ever since we moved to Colorado, and it's a dream to live there and walk the boulevard
It's pretty
and
cool.
see the beautifully restored homes, the character, and the way that jives with the modern world. I mean, the boulevard's been paved. There's no longer a tree in the middle of it. So, we're advancing, but it's important to keep that character. And it's, comes down to the details.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it really does.
it does. And it can be interesting discussions in Redstone, and you're prepared for that, I assume.
I am. Yes, I am familiar.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you partially answered, I think, so you live in Redstone, not just in one of the subdivisions around
We
town.
live in Ranch Acres, so the Crystal Farmhouse is our neighbor.
Okay.
So we're
good.
close.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
What do you think of the, seasonal nature of it? What is, how does it feel in the summertime to you when it starts to get busier?
It's amazing how quickly we acclimate to our environment. Just compared to Aspen, for example, the boulevard in the summer is so busy. There's so much traffic, and it's a lot of fun. It's the seasonality it's fantastic, and I think it's really pronounced. I mean, there are distinctly 4 seasons. There's some overlap as we're experiencing right now. This late spring day, 2 days left in winter. But it really is enjoyable to experience the different days. The light is
Yeah.
very telling.
Yeah.
I mean, it triggers everything.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you. And we just recently updated our code over there, if I remember. I'm looking at Susanna Reed recently. Are there parts of the code that you have concerns about at all?
I think concerns is probably a strong word. I have reviewed the updated, actually the red lines of the updated code to see the transition from the 2004 to I think the 22 code. And I imagine what these meetings will come down to are the exemptions and what's allowed, what's not, what's appropriate. And I think that's where it gets really fun and creative about the design process. I mean, is the dormer okay? Is it not? Greater than 150 square feet, that's not exempt for an ADU. I mean, it's all the details.
Yeah.
And I'm familiar with that, and I understand the process. I respect the process, and I appreciate the challenge and the opportunity to serve on this committee in that aspect.
Can be a feisty crew over there.
So circadian rhythms,
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for applying. It's
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you. Yeah.
Likewise.
Yeah,
Okay, we have-
yes, I mean, one of my questions, and you kind of answered it, I was just wondering where you lived in the neighborhood and if your house was impacted by the historical designation, but.
Yes, it's not, you know, we're not 1,000 feet from the boulevard, but I think everyone's impacted.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to have
everybody
something to
in the-
talk about, right?
Yeah, it's like the extended Redstone community is not just Redstone Boulevard, but
Right.
a lot more people around there who are impacted by what happens there.
Very true.
So thank you so much for your interest in applying for this board, and I don't think that we will have any problem in appointing you to it, given that there are, you know, the possibility of alternates.
Sure.
And don't worry that would be just an alternate position, because always the alternates
You can step right in
might
there.
not be able to vote on something if it comes down to a vote, but you would be able to fully participate in the discussions and then fill in for someone else if they're not there at the actual meeting, if a vote is taken on something.
Well, that
So we
sounds great.
appreciate your interest, and we'll let you know, or Charlotte, I guess, will be the one to
Be in
officially let
touch.
you know when
Yeah,
we
that'll
come
be
to a
great.
decision.
The next interview is April 2nd.
Okay.
And I'm actually discussing decisions with the board on that date.
Okay,
So hopefully I can follow up with you shortly after that.
that sounds great.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Appreciate the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Good
cheers.
to see you.
You too.
Thanks, Susanna. Sure.
Let's see.
Is Joe?
Joe
Krebacher
said
is not,
Is he online?
he said he could not be here until after 2:30, and I'm not sure what time it is right now, but
We could do something else in the interim.
he did confirm that he would be here.
That's Joe. We know Joe.
well, I'm gonna suggest a 5-minute break first, and then we'll tackle the rest. You know, we don't have that much more coming on our agenda, but let's take a 5-minute break till 2:35,
Okay.
and then we'll
See if Joe's here.
Okay.
keep going at that point. Okay, welcome back to our work session of the Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday, March 19th. We are at the last of our citizen board interviews for today, and we have Joe Kraybacher, who has served for many years as a P&Z member, and the P&Z, I think, is the hardest board that we have that advises us, because you have so much material you have to go over and make wise decisions on, some tough problems sometimes on people's applications and master plans and whatnot.
Right.
So thank you so much for all the service, the years of service that you have put in. So, why do you want to reapply at this point? Tell us why do you want to keep being on the Planning and Zoning Board?
Well, I'd like to finish up the climate initiative, I think is the main thing. I'd like to, I was one of the subject matter experts, so to speak.
Oops.
I thought it was on. Oh, did I turn it off?
Yeah.
The red light is on.
Oh, the red light
You
means
need the
on.
red light on.
Oh.
It's confusing. You're not the
I thought
only
it was
one who
gonna
gets
turn
confused
green.
by it.
Anyway, let me start over. So I'd like to continue on the board for another 3 years so that, I can participate in the climate initiative and the Citizens Growth Committee recommendations as they're going to be adopted. I understand from, I think it was the joint BoCC meeting we had recently, it's going to be 18 months, plus or minus 2 years maybe. So I was one of the 3 P&Z members that was a subject matter expert that participated in the 21 meetings last year. So I'd like to be able to, use that, experience and knowledge to assist in this next phase. That's probably the main reason. I mean, I enjoy P&Z. It's interesting issues and topics, and, it's important to me. I live in Woody Creek, and, I've always been a big advocate of keeping the county rural, in the rural areas of the county. So that's my main objectives, is to see if we can deal with all the changes that are coming and the problems with lack of employees and housing and so on.
Okay. So, how long was Steve Whipple on P&Z? You guys must be vying with
I think
him.
until he passed away. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think he passed away.
I don't think.
Well, Jim Reeser, right? Remember Jim Reeser?
Yeah.
I think he had a few more years than me.
Well,
But I don't know how long Steve was on the
Steve used to keep
P&Z.
every file that was in their paper on shelves in his office, so he could go back and refer to something that happened like 5 years ago. It used to drive us crazy
Right.
when he would do that. But anyway, so I was just
I
wondering.
think
when
I came
thought-
on the board maybe a year or two before the 2006 code. So
yeah.
we went through the whole 2006 code when I was
I
on the
remember
board.
that.
And
Don't
then,
we all?
and then we did the Aspen Area Community Plan,
Oh, God.
which took about 3 years. And then I got kind of burned out and I resigned for I think a year.
Then we brought you back.
Maybe a year or two, yeah. And then I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't have resigned. But I got a little burned out on the AACP.
That was, a long
Yeah.
process. So I have to ask, you made a comment, allow more P&Z participation in the review of site plans and activity envelopes. What would be your thought on that?
Well, when the changes were made, and maybe, I don't think it was with the 2006, but it used to be that, you know, site plans and activity envelopes would come through P and Z.
Right.
And now basically, you know, most of them I think are done administratively now. Or they then go to a hearing officer, or they end up being appealed to the BoCC. But, you know, I found that interesting and something that I wouldn't say disappointed, but, you know, disappointed that P and Z, you know, didn't have the opportunity to weigh in on those things anymore.
It kind of, to me, it would kind of be like the fruits of your labor. You know, you got through the application process and then being able to carry it over. Have you
Right.
talked with staff about that?
No, I haven't.
As I'm
Staff
looking
is
at staff.
overwhelmed with having to deal with activity envelopes and site plans.
Might be worth a conversation.
Be a code amendment, though, I think.
Yeah,
in order
yeah,
to
it would.
do that again.
So, and I want to thank you for all the time you put in and the recent efforts. It was an amazing committee. And I think the recommendations that came out of the committee are pretty worthwhile and very interesting and just a great effort.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Kelly?
Hi, Joe. I'm wondering, how's the participation on the commission now, right now? Like, I know I think we made it smaller, right? Where we went from
Right.
9 to 7.
Well, I think, you know, we're getting decent participation on it. I mean, we're going to lose Jeffrey, presumably. I don't know if we're going to lose him or not, if he'll stay on, but I think he's probably, you know, whatever, got a decent shot at, you know, Steve's seat. And then, you know, it's been helpful having Doug Throm on there to get, you know, some additional input. Trying to think who we have Zach and
Chelsea.
in Chelsea, right, as the vice chair and chair. Be nice to, you know, I don't really keep track of, you know, who actually shows up, but I don't think you know, I think we've got it. We may have a couple vacancies, maybe we don't, but
Full board,
we have a full board.
as long as you renew.
Of 7.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we get pretty good participation, and everyone seems to be pretty well prepared. And,
Engaged and,
you know,
good.
it's nice getting the packets ahead of time. I don't have the Steve Whipple program, but I got a computer.
God, it was
and,
driving me crazy.
you know, I've got them all filed in my computer in case you need to
It
pull
was an
one up.
interesting P&Z back then, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking how people come from different backgrounds, but Zach was working right back there running the grassroots.
Oh, is that right? I
TV,
didn't know
listening
that.
to our meetings
Oh.
and watching our meetings. And
Finally said I got too much
he
information
liked-
here.
I mean, he liked the different things we talked about, and that
Yeah.
like piqued his interest in, you know, being active in the county government process. So that's
Right.
how he ended up being on
Oh, it's
P&Z.
interesting. Yeah.
He lives in my district.
But there's a couple other that are termed out, I think, besides me, or am I the only one this time?
You're the only one for this year's
Oh,
renewal.
okay.
Next year, we have 3 who will,
Mm-hmm.
terms will be up.
Well, I think it's one of the best commissions that we have, you know. I mean, I was on the Board of Adjustment for a year, and it's just, it's just kind of, you're dealing with this, you know, it's like one standard, and that's about it, and, you know, so,
P&Z was fun.
yeah.
A lot of work, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of work, but, you know, staff is great. They put together, you know, great memos and, you know, put it all together for us, makes it a lot easier.
Great, well, thanks. Yeah.
So, from our perspective, I think all of us really want to get these new code amendments about the whole climate action plan put into effect. And I know that's gonna take some time to do that, but we're kind of off to a rough start on a couple of things here, but I appreciate that you want, you know, that you participated in helping to set up all the proposed code changes, and that you're sticking with it, and hopefully well, I don't know if we're gonna finish it during my term. I don't think I'll have the pleasure probably of being here to the end of that, but I'm glad that you're sticking with
Right.
that.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is, and it's probably going to be, as like Jessica was saying at that last meeting, it's probably going to just be a new, you know, completely new land use code. So that's kind of exciting. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of work, but I think it's time. You know, it's been 18 years since we had the old code, and
Yeah.
you know, obviously things have changed a lot in the valley. You know, the surge of people that have come in here after COVID, and it's just continuing, I think, to see, you know, more people that are moving into town, and it's kind of unfortunate, you know, that values have gone up so high that it's just, you know, kind of ridiculous in terms of being able to even live here anymore. But
Do you think the Aspen Community Plan is still meaningful?
it is in some sense. I think it's getting dated. I mean, it's what it was a 2000 plan, right? So I think
It's every
right?
5 years, isn't
2012,
it?
I thought. I don't know if it's been updated since then. Yeah.
Aren't
Oh,
they
maybe,
supposed
yeah,
to-
maybe you're right. Yeah, the 2012. Yeah, yeah. I think it, you know, it had a lot of things in it that we're dealing with now. You know, like energy issues, and you know, those were on the, you know, on the radar screen that far back.
Yeah.
And so now we're seeing it come into, you know, much better focus. I'm glad that you guys pushed through the energy code amendments. I think that's gonna, you know, it's really gonna help a lot. And I thought that Jeff Erickson's, I didn't attend the last one. I watched it on YouTube and the one before, and I thought he made a very compelling case, frankly, on the amount, and I was surprised, frankly, to see some of these houses have 400% more exterior energy use than inside the house,
Yeah.
which I thought it was going to be the other way around.
Interesting.
But it's pretty interesting how that all came out. So yeah, congratulations for, you know, getting that pushed through. I guess we've got it in about 15 days or so. It's going to go into effect.
30-day went.
30 days. About a month left. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay, well, we have two board members who aren't here today that are in Washington DC lobbying for RAFTA for a few days, and they will need to review the videos of the different interviews before we make a decision, but
Okay.
I don't think there's nobody else who's applied for
No.
this empty position, and I think we're probably won't have any trouble
I think I know what we're gonna
reappointing
do with
you.
them, yeah.
And thank you so much for the work you and your wife have done in Haiti over
know,
the
it's gotta
years,
be
and it
Yeah.
brutal.
breaks my
Thanks.
heart to see what's happening there now.
Yeah, well, we're super encouraged that, you know, it's been a long year
Yeah.
dealing with those issues, and but yeah, we're real close. They're, you know, supposedly they're gonna actually load the boat later today, and we staged all of our equipment, and because most of these kids are in wheelchairs, a lot of them are bedridden, and you know, so there was no way to do it by commercial flight or anything like that. But yeah, we're pretty excited about, you know, kind of a new era for them, and we're going to still have about 40 kids that are healthy kids that are still in Haiti, and but we'll see what happens if it's just, you know, it's a terrible situation, you know, so it's hard to say what's going to happen to the country going forward. Yeah.
We've been thinking about you.
Thank you.
Makes P&Z stuff pretty easy, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you.
All right.
See you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Okay, next we have review of future agendas. John.
Yep, just a reminder that there is a ski day over here at the Eagle County Commissioners. I know Kelly, I think you've said you're going to go. Patty, I wasn't sure if you were going this year.
Yeah,
or
I'm
not.
going. I'm
You are
gonna be
going,
down Valley
okay.
in the morning getting grandkids off to school. Then I'm gonna drive up, go to that, and I'm gonna drive back to down Valley to pick grandkids up maybe after school.
Okay, and I may not make this one. You know, that's just no fun.
And it's at the same place as usual
Yeah,
at 12:30.
for lunch, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going with Molly to a medical appointment she has down in the Grand Junction area on Friday, so I won't be here.
Okay.
you know if we-
Charlotte sent an email on March 18th. That has all the details in it.
Did we offer it up, do you know, to the ski company, to Jeff? You know, we used to always invite Mike Kaplan.
I do not recall, but I think Ria was on top of that, who's been
I
organizing
thought that
it.
would be a nice thing to do. Okay. Yeah, so it'll be Kelly and I and, are you gonna ski, Kelly?
Yeah.
I will be organizing the tables.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Anytime,
I get
anytime.
in a few more days, even though these conditions are getting kind of yucky.
Yeah, I get kind of sloppy up there.
Well, the cross-country skiing right now is absolutely the best that it is any time of the year. It's
No.
cross skiing. We can ski anywhere, just
At your house, oh my God, I
at
skied
our
up to
house.
the
It is
bells.
so fun.
Now she can't move.
I can't move, and it was like ice, like slippery ice, chunky and slippery on the way up, and then like slushy and like really fast on the way
I
down.
heard there's a big avalanche up there. Did you go?
Yeah,
'Cause I know that Rick Dean wasn't taking snowmobiles past the avalanche because
oh yeah, no, that they were all the way up to the lake
they were.
this weekend. Anyway, so maybe I'll come to your house because the conditions of the bells were not great. But anyway.
So, anything else, John?
Just a note, and we brought this up previously, but we have the NACO conference coming up.
I was gonna-
on- Oh, were you gonna bring that
I
up?
have it on my
Okay.
list.
Well, I don't want to steal your
Well, it's in
thunder.
July,
It's July 12th through 15th. Yeah.
and my question was going to be more about the resolutions to you. And
Oh,
we-
okay.
We need to, you and I need to get together and follow up on that.
Yeah, so, and also just who all is going to go, I know Patty, you,
If we do resolutions, I'm gonna go, and I'm hoping you're going with me.
I am going to do what the board tells me to do.
I thought we were gonna do the presentations back there related to our visit to Washington about.
So this is, we talked about it a little bit, this is following up on the NACO policy platform to get a resolution passed for both of the airport issues. One is the carbon tax fee, and then the other is the box for use of airport revenues, drawing those so we can maybe bring some off airport property for the purposes of carbon reductions. But we do need some folks in attendance the 12th through the 15th in order to get those resolutions on. So I just wanted to flag
Tampa
that.
in July.
I can't commit to that at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got some time. It's the middle of
Okay.
July, so see what happens.
We used to do, the clerks used to have their summer conference in Fort Myers in July.
Pleasant, huh? Yeah.
It was so sticky.
Yeah, so John, we'll talk more about it, and we need to follow up and get the format to doing the resolutions. I did open the discussion with Rachel Richards, since she had done those resolutions in the past, and she said if she wanted us to just take a look at what we're putting together, she'd be more than happy to.
Cool. And that's all I've got for future agendas right now.
So it's kind of a future agenda item, but the Glenwood City Council mixer that they're having on April 12th. And I just got a reminder email about that to RSVP for it.
I tried to RSVP, and all I could do was get it put on my calendar.
Well, they did say, the thing I got today said, don't forget to RSVP. Well, then, in looking at my calendar, I have Club 20 in Grand Junction. I will be in Grand Junction, so I cannot be there.
The Friday evening, I'm planning 6 to 8,
Friday
I'm
evening,
planning
so-
to go.
I mean, I hope we have good representation from the county, but I just wanted to bring that up
Yeah.
just as a reminder for,
I'll have
I will be at CCI and CCAP meetings in Denver.
I'm planning to go, and there just wasn't an easy way to RSVP to click on to, so I'll call City Hall. It's because it's
You
Glenwood
might need to
Springs.
open I think it said view the card.
I did, and there's,
Okay.
but I'll just call them to make sure that just clicking on it to put it on your calendar doesn't, is it qualifies as an RSVP or not. But my plan is to attend as of right now. I'm good to go.
And then we'll just need to, maybe I could send an email to Francie and Greg just to remind them of that and have them check their calendar.
I think Francie
And
was
either
thinking about.
RSVP
I
or,
think Francie was thinking about going, but I don't know about Greg.
yeah.
So we should notice it, just to be on this, even though it's a hors d'oeuvres and cocktails. but
I
we
just
should
put a note in on that, yep.
I do have one thing, Steve, on futures.
Yeah,
I questioned the CDOT meeting about lunch. It's apparently gonna be virtual, so let's,
Lunch isn't as good that way.
nah,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
my effort to have them join us for lunch, because I talked with Brian Pettit, and he said they're trying to get all their
They're going
meetings over with.
virtual.
I said, they just don't wanna see how bad the roads are up Highway 82. So, yeah, so we can take that off our possibilities
Okay,
as
thank
far
you.
as having lunch.
And then I want to note our conversation this morning about adding the East Mesa ditch funding to next Tuesday's meeting.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's meeting with McIntyre this afternoon about that. Go back time. And Steve, when's the Liars thing, tomorrow?
The-
When's the Liars?
oh, the Liars competition is this Saturday. at
Saturday.
4 to 6 at Mountain Chalet.
Well, Jackie Merrill mentioned something, they were meeting with Amory, is there an event tomorrow night?
So yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that. The way this all came about is that Amory, who lives in Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus area, he approached Ned Andrews, the
Right,
chairman of the caucus, and asked if he could do a presentation on, the Aspen Fly Right presentation to the caucus. So then Ned felt uneasy with not having the county also present, our position on that also. And since I live in the caucus area
right,
also.
right, but shouldn't we have a staff person there?
Well, that's what our plan is, that we
Oh.
will have staff there too.
Yeah, so we plan to have Steve talk about this during open discussion, because
Oh, okay,
it
because this is
came
all
up.
new to me.
Yeah, it is. It's new. We're actually scrambling to put some information together right now. That's part of why I'm double tasking over here. But I will be in attendance. I believe Dan will be there also. But they've asked Steve to speak, so we'll be there in a supporting capacity and trying to put some information together for
Okay.
him.
When I look at the future agendas for next week, it looks like we're starting at 1 tomorrow or Tuesday afternoon. Is that still going to be the case? And the reason I ask is because my kids are on spring break, and Bridget will be at camp, but Aloysius doesn't have a camp to go to, so I just need to. I might be on Zoom both of those days.
Sure. So right now we don't have, we haven't had anything else come on to those agendas, so we're still planning on starting at 1.
Okay, so it
'Cause
would
I
just
have
be
APRA
that ditch
In the morning on
thing.
Tuesday.
Okay.
And I will not be here. I'm going to be out
Yeah.
next week.
Anyway, so just a heads up, I may be by Zoom next week.
I just got a message about CDOT meeting on the 2nd from Scott Thompson. He said they're concerned, and the fire board is concerned, that the sides of Highway 82 are not being mowed and causing hazard for wildland fire. And he wants to attend the meeting in order to discuss that with CDOT. I don't, how, do you, what we want to do?
We can get together with Scott and figure out. I mean, it's I think a reasonable thing for us to highlight for CDOT as a maintenance issue.
Does you want Scott to attend?
Let me shoot it to Brian, just see if it's something we
All
want
right,
to bring
so I'll
up.
just let Scott know he's gonna hear from somebody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect timing, Scott.
Do we know
Somebody will get back to you.
when there will be follow-up on the bridges? discussion.
Intercept bridges? Intercept
Yeah,
what?
I'm sorry.
the open space and trails bridges proposal to the Rio Grande.
I do not. We have to talk to Gary about that.
Okay.
We
And
bring
I
that
think they
forward.
had to do some more engineering or something, or cost analysis?
I think
or
we
what?
requested the continuation, so
Yeah,
I just.
so we have not rescheduled, so the board was split on that issue and did not give direction to move forward. And so, the board asked for some, additional consideration. I think we're still, figuring out how to bring that back to you.
I think we wanted to know about paving, if we were gonna end up paving the whole Rio Grande through there, and the cost, and the maintenance, and winter access, and there were still some unanswered.
And it was also bringing it back in a way where you could hear some public input, I think was
Right.
the other, conversation.
Can I possibly make a request, if it's okay with board members, not to add much more to April 10th, which is our regular meeting, because I have to drive to Denver that night.
Fine with me. I don't know what we
We
have.
have the Jakeman Creek and the Redstone Castle land use items.
Oh, there's, yeah, and that's, and we have the Jakeman Creek is the site visit?
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk to Leslie about that. I will plan to go on this site visit. I just, because of a recent knee strained ligament, don't think I'm gonna be jumping around in heavy wet snow.
Well, you might not need to.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So that's why I said that with a question mark in the end. I was gonna maintain the hot chocolate in the car, but it could be lemonade and cookies instead of hot chocolate and
Yeah.
cookies.
Yeah, and it could be with that being a little bit south facing, maybe they won't have any snow on the ground.
I know,
there
that's why,
At
yeah.
this point. Need to be prepared to post haul through some snow though, possibly. Are the Eagle County Commissioners going to be going on the site visit when we go?
I don't think so.
Or are we just gonna look at the Picking County part of it? Do you happen to know, John?
I believe Patty's right about that. I don't believe they're going, but we can double check that.
And I think we're looking at the whole parcel. Well, you are, it's up in the boonies. I'm a man in the lemonade stand.
Let's see, we kind of have combining open discussion and future agenda items kind of together. Do you have any other
don't
open
have any
discussion
additional.
items?
No.
Does anyone else?
Just have this letter.
Well, then I have one that, a citizen brought up the fact that there are no electric charging stations at the Brush Creek Park and Ride, where there used to be some, then they did all the repaving, and now there are no charging stations. The citizen wondering what happened to the charging stations,
No,
and when
they-
are we going to replace them?
Yeah, and so I do know there are charging stations coming. I have to see what the status of those is. There's a hang up. I don't know if it was a supply chain issue or exactly what happened with those, but there are chargers coming.
And there's more to be installed than were previously there.
Correct, yeah.
There's
And we were gonna
patience.
have more available than we had
That's correct.
previously.
That's correct. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head right now.
And that's what I told him. It was actually Greg Fitzpatrick who asked me that, Pat's husband.
Oh, yeah.
So he was disappointed that they had disappeared.
They'll be coming back.
Okay, well, that's what I told him. I mean, I didn't know why they hadn't been replaced
I'll
already.
just drop another note to Brian here.
They're upgrading them, so they had to get, yeah, probably the demand issue.
Let's see, any other open discussion things? And we need to wait for Michael for the letters.
Oh, Kara was gonna join. Is Kara on?
I don't have a problem with the, there she is.
Oh, Kara's
Oh, there's
Kara's
Kara-
gonna join
there's
us for
Kara,
the
huh?
letter. Thank you for 2 reminders, and I almost forgot the letter.
Hi, Carrie, you are
Hey,
muted.
Kara.
everyone. Filling in for Michael. He's out on a much deserved vacation, so I'll try and do my best. And this is a carryover from last week, but what is in your packet is a letter of support for the state's application to the EPA for their big funding that's available right now. And so we've been working, Michael and staff have been working with various aspects of the state on this project because it is a pretty big EPA funding stream that's available right now, but there's a lot of stipulations, so it required the state complete a greenhouse gas roadmap, which they solicited feedback on this summer. And then that turns into their application to the state, which is going to be for technical assistance, which we've given feedback on, and now this letter in support of the state's application. So there's a lot there. I'm happy to give more background, but that's the very succinct version of this.
I have a question. Is this otherwise monies that we're not applying for separately?
So, in working through both CC4CA and even Sustainable Strategies, our grant consultant, is that it's pretty clear that the states are likely to own, that EPA is likely to award either at the state level or very large regional projects, not individual communities.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have a problem with the letter.
No, the letter looks very well written. I don't see any typos or anything in it. It makes sense.
We can just have it signed electronically, right, since Greg won't be back till next week?
So let's see, yeah, is this timely that, well, maybe we could put Greg's electronic signature on it so we could get it sent out right away.
I can work with Charlotte. I know that they're looking for these letters by tomorrow, so I'll work with Charlotte. And Steve, this might be in all the letters of support I've taken, if this is the first one that passed your grammatical eye. So that's success.
No, somebody, spell check can do funny things that it'll say something's okay, but it's the wrong word, or totally changes the meaning of it because something is spelled wrong, and the spell check doesn't catch those nuances, but it really takes someone to read each sentence carefully. My mom used to do that for the Aspen Times weekly newspaper. She was one of the proofreaders for that, so she had to read every line of everything she was looking at and edit it and try to catch those mistakes ahead of time. But this is a good job on this one, Kara. I was just thinking we could, Greg could potentially sign it in Washington, D.C. and scan it, get it scanned and faxed back, or
He's flying today and they're in meetings all day tomorrow. I think
Yeah.
electronic signature, which I suggested too, is what we need to do.
That's probably the best.
Yeah, either that or I have permission from Greg to sign if they need a personal signature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll work with Charlotte. We can use Greg's e-signature and get that sent off. So thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Okay, thanks, Kara. Good job filling in.
And then Greg had another letter for us to review, right?
Greg did?
The one,
Related to his testimony.
yeah, it was his testimony. It's like 6 pages of his written submission to the committee he's going to testify before tomorrow
Which committee? Oh, back in Washington?
in Washington.
Oh, I didn't.
So,
So-
and the reason he wanted us to review it was to give him permission to say he's representing Pickens County, not just himself.
But he's back there representing RAFTA.
Right, but he got roped in while he was there to,
it was,
So-
it's, on my phone, it's like
It's
a novel.
very interesting reading and goes into great detail. I don't think Greg wrote it all. I think he had some help from, some organization helping him on some of the writing. But he added a lot of his personal items, like his dad being in the 10th Mountain Division, training at Camp Hale, fighting the Germans in northern Italy, and the fact that Camp Hale was made a national
Was it sent
monument
by
by the
email or by
Antiquities
text?
Act. So the two bills he
came
is
through Charlotte.
testifying against or how HR House Resolution 6547 has to do with the undoing the Bureau of Land Management RMP process, Resource Management Plan process, and then HR 5499, which would pretty much totally gut the Antiquities Act. Now, the Antiquities Act, when you read Greg's whole letter, that was responsible for creating the Grand Canyon National Park, was the first time it was used, and most recently was used for designating Camp Hale.
Do you know how much time you get to testify back there? It's like this long.
So he's gonna have he's submitting the 6 pages of written stuff that he wants us to endorse that, so he could say it's from Pitkin County. And he's only gonna have 5 minutes to talk, and he's
Well,
just gonna have to give the high points of,
Yeah, usually you don't get 5 minutes. That's pretty good.
yeah.
But, so he's gonna bring in, I'm trying to find it on it.
Yeah,
can't
I mean,
find it.
their bills, sponsored by Lauren Boebert to essentially gut updated rules at the BLM and
Right.
the Antiquities Act.
But, so when he speaks and talks about his dad, he's not speaking for
Well, no, but I
Pitkin
think
County.
he wants
That
to be
gives
able
him
to
a little
say Pitkin
background.
County,
Yeah.
opposes these bills,
Here
and
it is.
here's my story. Which makes sense. I mean, that's how anybody should testify.
Oh, I just got his, oh, here we go.
So
I
it
just read
was,
the party was gonna join us.
yeah, you found it from Charlotte. So I read through it this morning. It's all, I agree with everything he said in there. He went into a lot of historical detail and stuff on it that was interesting, but
Yeah, and that's why.
I wouldn't mind having Pitkin County's name on it, saying, having that we endorse Greg's testimony.
Me too. I'm fine with it.
And John, had you had a chance to look through it at all?
Yeah, I'd reviewed it, and then Greg had written me this morning that he wasn't ready to talk about publicly, so that's why I didn't bring it up.
Yeah,
So I
because
don't
he
know if he-
called me yesterday.
And it's been a mixed message,
yeah.
so, to be
Well,
sure.
he had wanted us, it was suggested we talk about it in an executive session, but it wasn't
It's not executive
noted.
session
It wasn't
material.
noticed, and it wasn't really an executive session item, so.
Yeah.
Yes, he wants
So-
to make it a surprise to Congresswoman Boebert.
I would say that, from what I read, I believe that the testimony is generally aligned with positions this board has taken regarding federal policy related to federal lands. And so I do not see it as a big departure and kind of carrying a flag that this board has been carrying for a while. And so I didn't have a red flag around it.
I just
from
hope
that
it's not an
perspective.
issue with him being, isn't RAFTA funding him to go back there? And they're
Yeah,
okay
he
with
had
him
that
taking time? 'Cause-
conversation, I believe.
Yeah, because he'll be gone for most of the RAFTA meetings to do this by the time he gets.
Well, I didn't get that impression from him.
Oh.
He didn't sound like he was missing anything.
Oh, okay, because
Yeah.
Francie told me they were gonna be crammed both days, so, okay. I just didn't want him to run a,
I think they're still waiting to see the schedules until late last week, so.
just as long as he's clear on that, I don't wanna.
Anyway, well, sorry.
But so it sounds
I don't
like
care.
it's not a departure, and so from staff's perspective, we didn't see a red flag with it.
Okay. And then I think the only other thing I wanted to raise was the work from the tax commission. They've concluded and made their recommendations to the legislature. And I'm not sure what the legislature is going to do with that, but maybe we want to spend a little time digging and talking about that in more depth at some time. And I can send you all materials to prepare. Really, they've talked about how tools to smooth the spikes in, in assessments, potentially divorcing how assessments for schools and assessments for governmental districts are handled, expanding the senior tax exemption and primary property resident, potentially creating reductions for primary residents, and I think there was one other thing I'm forgetting.
How does the issue that Mary Wolf brought?
Though that is a little bit separate. What that does is gives counties the authority to create a class of property that could receive a tax reduction.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have to be like uniform across a class. And so Mary was arguing that childcare should be considered as a class, and that we create an ordinance to put parameters around defining childcare and whatever the exemption or reduction would be.
Be interesting
those.
to know how many properties would be impacted, that childcare facilities are on privately owned property versus like yellow bricks on the city's.
Like government property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one at the school, high school there is school property. So be interesting to see.
I mean, Ashley might have some of that information. I don't know if that could have come
Yeah.
up in the evaluations of our grant program. you know,
Yeah, it's
with
hard to
our-
create a special, zone area for just one property.
Yeah.
If the board is interested in us looking at that for that purpose, we can do it. I was unclear reading the legislation whether each entity needed to act independently on this bill for relief on their portion of the tax bill. So for example, if we elected to provide relief for that property, it's not clear to me whether it's on the mill levy side or the assessment side, if
Oh,
that
yeah.
makes sense.
And
If
what
it's
the
on the
impact
mill
would be
levy
for our,
side, it only affects the county's mill levy, not,
All the
if
other
it's on
The
the
other
assessment
districts,
side, it
yeah.
affects everyone, and
that's a good question.
we need to do some more research, because in reading it, and
Yeah.
you
I
may be
haven't
more
dug into
familiar.
it that
Okay.
much, so I
Okay.
can't answer that.
So yeah, I was looking at it, and it wasn't clear to me operationally how this works, so I think staff needs to spend
So
some
that would
time
be
with
one
it.
aspect I think we should look into. The other one would be how many properties, if we were to make a special exemption here for childcare, how many properties would be affected?
Right.
Off the top, I can think of only hers.
Well, I don't know about Sprouts.
Oh yeah, she's on privately owned property.
Or
Should've
the
thought
Little
of that.
Red. I don't know.
Yeah.
And usually for an abatement or rebate type, which I think is the mechanism here, it would be paid and then rebated. There'd be an application process too, so, we can
There's a lot
capture
to
what
look
we
at.
can capture. But Ashley I think she's met with everyone in Picking County, so she should have a sense of that. We'll check with her.
And then how's our rebate process, application process? We haven't opened it yet, right? June?
No,
July,
we're working, so that's gonna go out. We're actually meeting this week on our outreach process on it, and Sam is working on the application process.
Great.
The hospital is going to be a partner
Right, you
in
said.
it. I think they're just dialing in their final number, but they'll be a significant partner in it. And I know there's a conversation With RAFTA, where I think it was a challenge because they're covering so many jurisdictions and we're just offering it in the county. But they were looking at some other creative options maybe to participate.
Is it
So
bus
still
passes
waiting.
or
Yeah,
something?
like bus passes or something like
School
that.
district?
So did not hear back.
Should we call them again?
We could. Yeah, and I know they're going through some transition and such right now too.
Aren't we all?
I did hear they recently raised enough money to be wholly self-funded.
Really?
As opposed to receiving state share,
Well,
which is interesting.
School district, Ashland School District?
but yeah, so that is moving forward, and we'll come back to y'all with an outreach plan and the application process. But it will probably not launch until May at this point.
Yeah, that's fine. As I was saying it, I was like, oh wait, we
Yeah.
talked about doing this
Yeah.
over the summer. So, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I don't.
Okay, any other open discussion items? And seeing none,
I'll see Kelly on
3:20,
Friday.
this will be, I declare this work session adjourned.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you.